So I'm hitting the live stream. So I'm just going to get you folks to give me 1 second just to confirm the live stream is good. All right, folks, you're good to go. Have a great meeting. I'm here if you need me.
Thank you so much.
No
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Arts Advisory Committee meeting. Greg is not here, so I will be filling in the role of chairing today's meeting. So thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, so just moving right along here. Did everyone have a chance to look at the agenda, and are there any comments, or are we good to proceed with it as is? I'm seeing lots of nodding heads and thumbs up. Okay, great. So from my understanding, there's no presentations as of the agenda. So let's just dive in with updates on the 5 points / Georgian Theater activities. I'm guessing that's from Rob.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to give you guys a bit of a snapshot of what's going on. I think it's important to know that with the changes with COVID and the openings that are going to be happening, we're getting a lot of interest in the use of our spaces. I think we have over 200 days of holds for the 5 Points Theater alone. So that's a great interest level of people wanting to come back, as well as Georgian. I think we're over, actually it's probably more than 58, but we already have 58 days of Georgian that's on hold as well. Some of the other things that are occurring that are exciting, and people are coming back in droves, I think. The dance groups are starting to knock on our doors. Well, they've always been knocking on our doors, but we're trying to find them other locations as well. We're working with some groups to utilize Eastview Arena, actually is an opportunity that we're looking at. For the dance groups, we've had them in there before. They loved it. So we got a couple other dance groups coming to look at the space, and we're hoping to be able to transform that into a great opportunity for them. So that's something else that we're working on. The Sadlin stage at the Sadlin Arena is another venue that we've been working with. John Durlis has utilized that facility for a show or two, and we're looking at other opportunities to use that space. It's sort of a third of the arena space where a drop curtain comes down, and that we can use to 12 to 1,400 seats. A great venue, a great opportunity for concerts and those types of things, and it works well with our in-house catering group that can feed and provide catering to those spaces. So that's another area that we're working on. And of course, Georgian College, the agreement. We're having a lot of discussion with Georgian College surrounding that space. Everything seems to be going in the right direction in regards to the agreement. There will be agreement drawn up in the very near future, and it has to go to council for approval. So we're working on that piece of it, but the negotiations seem to be going well. We have an anticipated event on March, I think it's 27th, to utilize the Georgian Theater. So we're going full steam ahead. If we don't get the report in a formal position by then, we will do a tentative agreement to keep us moving so that we don't lose that momentum that we have in the bookings, because I think it's important to get into that space. As far as the construction side of or the improvements that we need of Georgian College, we've been scheduling and organizing the work to get done. We don't want to move too far ahead until we have that agreement in place, but any of the major components can be done before we open. Any of the safety components like the fall arrest or the drapery issues that we may have will be able to be done before the March 27th. Some of the other ones that we have to do may take a little longer, like the overhead door in the back of the loading dock might be done later, but we can schedule that around user groups if we need to. So there are a number of things happening, lots of activities, and I just wanted to give you guys sort of a highlight of what's happening. The team is working hard. We're starting to bring back our part-time front of house people, which is something that I think everybody knows is finding staff is difficult. So we're working on that and trying to get our staff members in the facilities and get them ready and trained up for our shows. I know that Ian, your team has actually been into the 5 Points and doing a show now. So the great stuff that we're utilizing the spaces. So yeah, lots of things happening. Lots of I got to mention this too now, Ian, that we've talked about 5 Points and you being in there. We've just purchased streaming equipment so that we can actually do proper streaming at the Five Points Theater. So that'll give a lot of opportunities of individuals to be able to do live streaming opportunities and professionally done. So our team has learned that process because there's a little bit of a learning curve with that. So our theater techs have got all up to snuff with that. James and the team have got that all organized. So lots of great things happening. I'm really excited that March 1st is a change of COVID protocols. So I think lots of things are going to happen in the very near future. So we're hitting the ground and going. Just wanted to give you guys a bit of a heads up of what's happening and see if there's any questions or thoughts.
Yeah, I do actually. A couple of questions on that.
Certainly.
So I guess based on what you just said there, with the change in the mandate, so as of March 1st, the city's policy is going to be no more passports at the door, or is that up to the user groups?
We are still reviewing that scenario and what the regulations actually state. There aren't regulations out yet, and that's kind of the key.
Right.
Once the regulations come out, we'll be able to make a position on that. We're anticipating that there will not be a POV requirement. There might still be a mask mandate when it comes there, so we're keeping an eye on that. But there may not be a POV or a screening mechanism, which would be very helpful for us. And then there would also be, there could be a limitation, no limitations if that's the case. So we're waiting to see what those regulations actually state to be able to make a position on that one, Ian.
And if user groups wanted to enforce that, would that be an option? I'm just asking because in some cases, a lot of audience members are older, and that might be a determining factor as to whether they feel comfortable in the building.
That's an interesting question. I haven't heard the question of whether we want to continue with the mandates. User groups have generally their attendance protocols themselves. They can set, who's coming in and in regards to their audiences. So if that was a requirement or or a thought from the user group that wants to consider it, I would certainly think that it's something that we could work with and try and figure out what we can and can't do in that situation.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, just wanted to ask that. And then in terms of the number of days that you mentioned, that is amazing to hear, and thank you for that update. That's really great. Is that like for the 5 points? Is that about average? Is that higher than normal? Is that considering as well that we are going to lose a month and a half in the year?
Yeah, that's 100 holds. So, whether they come to fruition or not, we certainly hope that's the case,
Sure.
But we put them in holds and try and bring them forward. I think the last, in 2019, I think we had 158 days of actual utilization. So we're actually higher than our normal utilization in 2019.
Lovely.
So if that comes to fruition, yeah, we're going to be rocking and rolling, so to speak.
And then last question from me. Obviously, as well, we're looking at global supply issues continuing until, for the foreseeable future. In terms of those renovations on the Georgian, has there been a sense of any potential supply or ordering issues that might hold back that opening plan?
No, I don't think so. Any of the immediate items that we need to get done are generally stock items. The doors, like the overhead door might be one that's delayed, but I don't think that's an issue. In regards to crash bars and emergency doors, those are pretty standard. Most of those people have that stuff in stock. So once we get that scenario in play, we'll be able to move forward with no issues.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Any questions from anyone else in the group? No? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Rob. That was great. Yeah, it's really wonderful to hear all the great stuff that is opening, and thanks to you and your team for making all these additional spaces happen. That's very encouraging for sure.
Thanks, Ian, for utilizing the 5 Points Theater. Appreciate that. Hope things are going well.
It's from what I hear, it's been great. No, the team at the 5 Points is fantastic. We're always, it's great.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along here. So the next thing is the Performing Arts Center public consultation update. I guess Councillor Riepma, that might be you. I don't have a speaker to this, so maybe Councillor Riepma, maybe you can start us off.
Well, I'm going to be very brief because I don't really have much to update since the last time, but probably Stephanie, can you throw some light on that?
Yeah.
Where we've been since?
Sure, and I guess I just want to make sure I understand the context of the item on the agenda, in the sense that we're not talking about the results from the actual survey that was done. We're talking about sort of the go forward and what does that look like from a public engagement. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I just want to make sure contextually
No, I
speaking to
don't,
the right
that
thing.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd love to hear about that. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the update will be fairly tight at this point. As you are aware, Council did adopt a set of recommendations associated with the work that the Performing Arts Task Force completed. And what that next step looks like is for staff to now take that back and sort of operationalize some of those recommendations to get to a confirmed scope, to get to a design, to look at the fundraising elements. So what I would say is we are in process of just coming off that council direction, regrouping as a team to determine who's going to be driving some of that. And I think one of the questions that Rob and I have already identified in looking at what that go forward plan looks like is sort of those touchback points. I mean, obviously with any consultant we're going to bring forward, there will be engagement in principle. It's very standard in how we operate. But, you know, I think there is probably an opportunity and a role for the arts advisory in that. So I think, again, we need to put a little more thought framework on the next steps from the staff perspective. We do have a report back to deliver, but that, you know, I think we'll come back, and if it's not next meeting, maybe the following, with some thoughts, ideas on what that would look like from the arts advisory. So I know it's not concrete, but that's where the next steps are sitting and what we're looking at going forward.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Great. Any other updates on that, or any other thoughts or questions, Janet?
I just have a question. What's your public engagement piece as you move forward with this? You've gone to council. Perhaps there's been a media release, but what's your engagement piece in all this? Because I think that it's like, you know, it's like building the momentum before it comes. How's communications going to frame this, you know, sort of walk up the hill to the Performing Arts Center? Because to me, I know you can't name it and all those sorts of things, but, you know, publicly, you know, there isn't a cultural newsletter right now. We have Marshall. So, you know, I don't know who gets Marshall's thing, but could there be a piece that the city agrees to put to keep it to a large group ongoing interested in culture, or some vehicle to put it through to their cultural organizations? Because I think from experience, the money comes from awareness, and then the relationships linked to that. And everybody around this room is involved in, or some of them anyway, are involved in arts organizations where those relationships will need to be levered for the performing arts. So, you know, a proactive communication strategy, it would be a smart thing, and not just the standard, you know, whatever. I think, you know, so, and I know you never have money for anything, but, you know, it's cheap. And maybe, you know, there's a new little, you know, blurb that comes out about the Performing Arts Center. And, you know, it says, did you know we've looked at X? So it starts to build momentum of excitement, but it also gives them valuable information, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. You know, you put the mayor on it and said, you know, or somebody, he may not want to be in the limelight the next year in case things go south. But I'm thinking of a pre-engagement piece that actually means that you're fertile before it starts, because through the media, and you know, it's fine, but you have all these arts organizations that are expecting to be a part of it, and people are expecting to go to it. Can we use their relationships to lever the relationships for the Performing Arts Center through just a nice communications thing? And it could be just getting approval to put something in Marshall's every week about the performing arts, you know, or every month, because I think it might just get the well to be deeper.
I hear you.
It's just
Janet.
a thought.
No, I appreciate that feedback. And certainly we still have the Creative Berry social channels. I just came off a meeting with our team where we were talking about our marketing and engagement elements with that. So there are some existing. The other piece that came out of this public survey element for the performing arts was we walked away with a list of a few hundred individuals that indicated they wanted to be kept in the loop, that were interested in supporting the fundraising process. So I think those are some really key points when we get to that fundraising plan, but having those touch points throughout the community or as we go through the next steps is fairly taken. So I think if you will permit us to take some of that back, and again, as we talk about the role of Arts Advisory, maybe there is some pieces that go in there. And I see Rob's hand up as well, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Stephanie, and thanks for that. I think that a communication plan for the Performing Arts Center moving forward is something that will be developed as part of our process throughout the journey that we're going to take in regards to the Performing Arts Center. A communication plan is key. And Janet, thank you very much for that information. And those are great ideas to look at those types of channels and reach out to the organizations to help spread that message. And I think that's something that we're going to look at as we move forward. We might be a bit ahead of ourselves at this point in time, but we really need to focus on getting that consultant in play and start moving forward and then start looking at what those plans look like as we start to hit the ground and start looking for fundraising opportunities and all of those scenarios, Janet. So yeah, certainly something that we will put as part of a communication plan and work with our Access Berry team to make that happen.
I think the most important thing is if somehow you can focus on a personal as opposed to like personalize it somehow. I've had great success with those sorts of things. And I'm working on a project now, and we're going to start with the key person that everybody knows. And his name's Nick. And we're going to start an email, call it Nick's Notes, just to humanize the project, give them a contact, maybe an ambassador that everybody recognizes for the project before anything happens. It's a long way away, but it really, I can tell you, it makes a big difference because, you know, the wallet follows the heart. And if you can't hit the heart, then you're going to miss the biggest gift from the wallet.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Well said, well said. Sorry, I saw Jerry's hand up first.
Just very briefly, and this goes along with what everyone else is talking about communication. I think it's important for this committee to encourage city council and the groups to forward areas that they want our advice on. When we talk about the role of this committee and they talk about the specifics of the new arts center or whatever, I think it's important that this committee get as ahead of it as possible and get information about what they actually want us to advise them on. I sort of struggled with this over the week, looking at Ian's comment that came about the role of this committee, and one of the things that I thought of is we should be advising, but someone has to tell us what they want advice on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do a bit of that through the Arts Alliance. Like that's where some of my questions come from is just by asking the group if there's anything that they want to hear. But I agree. We should definitely, and thank you. That is, we'll get to that point a little later. But yes, absolutely, Jerry. Councillor Riepma, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I take Jerry's point, and I think that city councilors probably don't know what they need advice on. So I think that in many ways, this committee should give city council advice on what they think is good for the arts community. And I really take Janet's point because I think that with the Performing Arts Center, if we're going to raise money, I think Janet is right on. You know, we need to get a good communication plan going, and I think that may be really good advice to council. And I'm sure that Stephanie and Amanda have heard that, and are going to turn that over in their minds and figure out how to do that. I think, Ian, you said too that we have the Barrie Arts Alliance, and I think there's a group that is highly motivated, well organized, and I think that's a real opportunity for us to use in getting the word out. Those are my thoughts at this point.
Can I ask a question? That Arts Alliance, do they share their minutes with this group?
They don't. I could bring that to them at the next meeting.
Well, what I'm thinking is that if we're advising arts and not you're kind of the group of arts, obviously you're not everyone, but some of your questions will go right across the board. So I mean, I don't want to make up our whole meetings with what you guys want or interested in, but I think it could be reasonable to think about things that come up there being discussed at this table and seeing what partnership we could do to move things forward. Just thinking.
Yeah, I could certainly bring that up. I don't know about disclosing the minutes. I think like, you know, those like a lot of those questions, those conversations and stuff, I think are more powerful when they're internal. But I do think you're right. Perhaps a section of our agendas could be stuff that we want the Arts Advisory Committee to talk about or question, you know, that sort of thing. So that way, yeah, you're right. We get their questions as we discuss in a more formal channel than just Ian reporting back. Yeah, Scott.
I guess also is we know some of the people who are involved in the arts and culture community, but we don't know everybody. And so it's how to reach out to those people that may want to get involved in it. And if we're the conduit for it to get them involved is to get them involved, but it's how to get everybody involved. I mean, there was a survey of businesses done recently. Did that include a survey of who the arts and culture are within Barrie?
Sure, I can probably provide a little bit of color to that. So the business data survey was a door-to-door. So we had a group of students going door-to-door through our employment and commercial areas. So anyone that was, and we categorized them by NAICS codes, we looked at a few different things. So we're just finalizing some of those pieces now. We used a new data software, so this is our first go. So we're being extra diligent and trying to make sure we've got it right before we put it out there, and we're ramping up for this year's data survey. So we do have the ability to pull from a NAICS codes who we might consider to be in the creative and culture industries. What the data doesn't do is we don't have a way to track home-based or those that might be operating from a home type office as an address. It really is we only have the ability to look at our really employment and commercial areas. So that said, I certainly think we can look at that as a starting point. There are those businesses or those that we did the data survey did have the opportunity to opt in from a communications perspective. So there is some opportunities that way to engage. There is, again, the Creative Barrie channels. We've got about a 5,000 person following. We just did an audit, so it's very timely. So there's about 5,000 visitors on that. There is a Creative Barrie newsletter template. And again, as we're sort of ramping up, it's been more pushed out as things are happening as opposed to a regular. But those might be things and tools that we can sort of already lever to help support some of that messaging where we go out and, you know, does the Arts Advisory Committee have a little spotlight piece where the chair shares something? I mean, there's options, things to think about. I'm just kind of tossing things out on the table, but that's what we've got so far.
Great, thank you.
Janet, is your hand did you have anything else?
Not really. I think that
Okay.
actually I'm all good. And I'm going to get that creative channel link and get Marshall to put it on his email because I think that could be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, Janet. Okay, great. Anything else on the Performing Arts Center right now? Scott?
Yeah, I know there's an election coming up and in May, and so is a lot of this going to get put in place, and then the new committee or the new council, if there's any new council, they just continue on with it, or is there an opportunity for the new council to change things? It's a hard question.
I don't know. Councillor Riepma, maybe?
That sounds like a counselor question. There's what's happening in May is that nominations open, and the election actually happens in October.
Mhm.
A new council can do what a new council can do, right? They could sink everything and say, we're not going ahead with the Performing Arts Center, we're canceling the Arts Advisory Committee, or they could do quite the opposite, or they could just continue on. This committee is in office until the election. I guess in November, when the new council takes over, the new council will appoint a new committee. And of course, I suppose everybody's welcome to apply or reapply. So yeah, my crystal ball doesn't work really well in terms of what the future holds.
I guess my question really is, will the consultant be hired by that time?
I would think so. I mean, Stephanie can answer that, but I would think that the consultant will be hired in the next couple of months.
Stephanie, do you want to confirm or deny?
Wow.
Certainly, I mean, anything related to procurement, there is a process engaged. We are only at February of 2022, so I would certainly anticipate that we would have a consultant on board giving the report back and looking at 2023 budgeting, that we would have somebody on board certainly in 2022. Within 2 months might be a bit ambitious, but certainly within the next few. Just only, I mean, again, from a resourcing perspective, and between our both teams with Rob and I, it's just, once the project kicks, it's great. It's just getting those little bits from the back end ready to go. So there'll be someone hired this year.
Good. Thank you.
Janet, I see your hand up.
You're the other Janet. Sorry.
You. Yeah. Oh, it's down. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't.
No problem. I didn't know if it went down and then up again. Anyway, okay, that's great. Yeah. Anything else related to the Performing Arts Center? All right. Yeah. Let's move along. So the next thing is the Barrie Arts Award feedback. I guess Amanda, you have an update for us.
Yeah, thanks. So after our last meeting, Steph and I went away, and we really appreciate all of your feedback, and we think it does make sense to take all of your advice and keep the event in November for now. So we'll be planning for a November event. We haven't secured a venue yet. Of course, the venues that we were perhaps considering for may not necessarily be available in November. So if anyone had any feedback or ideas around venues that you wanted us to explore, now would be the time over the next month or so to think about it and share that information. As well, I just wanted to circle back and let you know that we're still open to ideas around the awards categories, themes, performers, other presentations, anything like that. So just wanting to keep that on your radar, since we do have some time to work on it. And I know you probably didn't have any opportunity to prepare in advance of last meeting. So I just wanted to see if there was anything anyone else wanted to share as far as feedback, if you had a chance to go away and think about it, or just a reminder again to keep it in mind. And over the next couple of months, we'll start confirming things like venue and the awards categories, so we can get our nominations out nice and early this summer. Yeah, Janet, I see your hand. Janet,
okay, I know nothing about the music scene, but Brett Caswell is
yeah.
Like, do you liaise with him at all?
Oh yeah, no, I talk to Brett pretty regularly. I know he's relaunching his community choirs project, which is fantastic. It might be worth looking at that. Yeah.
Could he do a choir there with the group?
He did. He had his youth choir at the 2019 Arts Awards.
Right, but like he gets them in bars and he puts them together and people come. Could he?
It might be neat to have him do like a community choir with the audience. That might be like an interesting.
That's
concept.
what I meant. Like like he does it all the time in bars.
Yeah,
it might be kind of unusual, but it could be kind of a fun, because then it allows for participatory.
Yeah,
and you can give people the heads up before so that they are thinking about it. But 6 people will get up. Or the actors that or the performers that are there that can sing and come up. So, it's worth thinking about. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
I love it. Thanks, Janet. Another
suggestion might be former winners, former winners of the awards. that are
Okay.
musicians or performers of some kind. See if they'll come back, and that way it's sort of like a self, it's like it's celebrating the work in the community, bringing cool people out and that sort of thing.
I love that. Thanks, Ian.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even some
Scott?
volunteerism, because I know there's some artists in Barrie. Carly Aikens comes to mind. She just put out a new album, if we call it an album now. And so she might be interested in promoting that.
Cool.
Great.
Fantastic.
Anything else for Amanda?
By all means, you can also reach out to me through Brandy, or if you've got my direct contact information, you can shoot me an email. We can chat through stuff if anything comes up between now and the next meeting too.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Ian.
That's great. Okay, great. Moving right along here then. So the next item on the agenda is the educational role of the Arts Advisory Committee. So thanks for, so this is my item. Basically, I just wanted to reopen the conversation about how exactly and what exactly would be the best use of the Arts Advisory Committee in terms of education. Again, I do apologize for not being able to be quite as present as I wanted to be at the last meeting when this was initially brought up. But yeah, Jerry, you already have your hand up, so let's hear from you.
I guess first off, I agree completely with what you said in your email. I think it's very easy for committees to get very enthusiastic and for all the right reasons, wanting to do everything and jumping into everything. But I think it's very important to understand the mandate of this committee. We are an advisory committee to City Council, and that's what we can do. The education piece, I think we can educate people that we are an advisory committee to council. And if they want to get council's ear, this is one avenue that they can pursue, because coming to us, talking to us, helping us understand what their issues or concerns or ideas are, we can then pass those on to council. I think that's our role, and I think we should stick to that.
I would agree, Jerry. Yeah, I think there's lots of organizations that do sort of community education and stuff like that. I mean, I know even the city has done that with things like the audition workshop that brought a bunch of the leaders of local arts theaters organizations together. Like, I think there's already lots of various channels to do that sort of advocacy and community support work. But I think keeping the ear to council. Now, what exactly that looks like, that is where I think things get really interesting, So for instance, even just in our earlier conversations within this meeting, perhaps we can utilize Marshall's newsletter as a way of getting the word out about the fact that we're here, we're here to help support the arts community, perhaps even giving a little update of the things that we have been discussing and working on. I know he's super collaborative when it comes to that sort of stuff, just so that way, and perhaps that's the lens that we put it through. Like, if we can get the agenda perhaps sorted out a little earlier, we could let Marshall's newsletter know and say, hey, we're talking about this and this and this today. Feel free to reach out to the following representatives, and we can bring up your points within the upcoming meeting.
And we do have a counselor on this committee that could
exactly
encourage council when they really need guidance or advice to come to this.
Exactly. And exactly, that two-way street of communication, which is great. Yeah, Janet. Oh, you're muted.
Not me.
No, sorry, yeah.
The other one.
I see a hand up.
Do you hear me?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I can't multitask, I guess, this morning. Anyway, what would you think if council submitted questions to us and we actually answered them? If we're an advisory council, why wouldn't we start to have more of an organic relationship with council so that we're not in a silo? Like, maybe we form the questions, and I don't know, Claire, this could be crazy, call me crazy, but, we need to start a dialogue, and they get reported to a lot. Why wouldn't report to them on questions that they have? And that's a form of education, but allows for an interchange and perhaps allows for, I'm all about the organic organization where it's a feedback and back and forth, and it's okay to get bad feedback. Anyway, I'm just throwing it out there.
See, from my perspective, that's exactly what I'm talking. Like, that's what we need to, like, getting that communication with council going. That's exactly it. Yeah, Councillor Riedma. Whether that works in practice, you can tell us. But
yeah, I guess that is the question, really. And to get a dialogue and to get individual councillors engaged, some are more interested than others, that's for sure. The process really works. Our minutes go to the City Building Committee, and I just happen to chair that one. So I can, when these minutes come, I can always highlight those. And the committee, the City Building Committee, actually will approve any or debate any motion that comes forth from this committee. And so, you may want to think about, putting forward some motions that will get more of the attention of the committee and council, presumably, because these things, there is a chain that they follow. So that may be one way of sort of expanding the role of this committee, or expanding the visibility of this committee to start with, for sure.
Actually, on a sort of similar note, I was wondering, do committees do presentations to council occasionally?
They certainly can, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that, also if we go to them and say, hey, we're here, these are the groups we represent, this is why, perhaps, when perhaps when the new council is established after the election, say, hey, this is why we exist, this is what the need in the community that we fill is, hoping to address, that sort of thing. That might also then, and then also they might have more faces to names and that kind of idea as well.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think I'd wait for the new council. I'd be inclined to do a progress report, if you will, say in September.
Lovely.
And of course, when the new council comes into place, then there'll be a bit of a hiatus until the new committee is appointed. So, but yeah, I think getting in front of council like that is probably a really good idea. And
yeah,
progress
Janet,
report, why not?
Yeah, totally. Janet, I saw your hand up.
Well, why wouldn't you just ask them some simple generic questions and have them answer them if they would? A new council would be good because they'd be keen to show their faces, have a neat reason to talk. And then you answer the questions, and then you present to them the questions, and it comes back to them, so that I'm trying to figure out how to engage them without giving them a report on what we do. That's so boring. So is there a way to no, but really, I mean, I go sideways. So is there a way that we can engage them, like with FAQs, and it's not to be cursory, like, did you go to an art performance? That puts somebody in a box, but, creative, open-ended questions that we could review and then report on. I don't know. But I think if you give a report, I'd like to see that something came back from council first that we reported from, so that because they're only interested in themselves in that moment. Like because that's what they're interested in, themselves, their people, what they're doing. So why wouldn't we try to find out what that was? Because I don't have any idea right now in relation to the art.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. Councillor Riedma.
Why do I get these questions? Well, I mean, hey, why don't we put together a list of questions you'd like council to answer? Because I don't know. I mean, would councillors actually respond to them? I don't know.
We could
Yeah,
send.
I mean, it's kind of a role reversal, right? Because council has asked this committee to be an advisor to them. So, you know, and you know, I mean, one of the things you could do is just for an example that came up this morning, is well, you could just put a motion together and say that, you know, this committee recommends that you know, a public consultation program be included in the PAC work. You know, I'm just pulling it off the top of my head, but that's, you know, and that can get you sort of in front of council. I don't know about asking councillors. I mean, I suppose we could do anything we want, really.
Or the other thing is to send a survey out that make up a survey that the councillors send out, and then we get the feedback, and that allows us to report to council.
Yeah, there's a few details in that one that have to be worked out, but it's certainly something you could do.
Right.
I sort of agree with Clara. I think that asking individual councillors, you're going to get a wide range of engagement from, I really want to participate, to who cares, I'm not interested in this. I think what we should be doing as a committee, and I'm not quite sure of how the mechanics of this would work, is monitoring all things that occur in the arts community and sending off advice to council. I mean, it would be great if they asked for advice on a specific, but barring that, I think much like the award ceremony, where we talked about, we would recommend that it be held off till November. I mean, we monitor things and then we give input into that. That's providing advice, I think.
Actually, Jerry, I think that's an interesting idea, because if we put that in some sort of a motion, it would end up going up the food chain and building some awareness for that. Even if it's kind of an unnecessary motion that we know staff are going to be doing anyway. But I think, you know, it's a way of creating some presence for ourselves.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because we now have this committee, and if everyone knows that we have the committee and this is what we do and this is what our mandate is, if something comes up that's going to be performance and arts related, one of the counselors, well, probably one of you guys will say, well, maybe we should contact the Barrie Arts Advisory Council and ask their opinion on this, or give them this information, and then they can feed that back. Because I think that's the whole purpose of this, is to try to link together the arts and culture with the city of Barrie. And if we keep saying, by the way, we're here when we need you, like the all hell, like the insurance companies, we're here if you need to. So and they'll go, eventually somebody go, okay, there's something coming up in 2 weeks at the next council meeting, and it deals with this. So let's get to that committee and see what their thoughts are on it. And then that really starts to link us together.
Yeah, Councillor Reedma.
Yeah, there are kind of two things that you kind of spurred my my thinking. The first one is that I'm often wondering why we don't have more activity on the stage in Meridian Square. And you know, like, this committee could raise that as a question, ask it of staff, and then maybe we could get behind supporting that kind of thing. How do we activate that space more than what is happening now? This is legitimately an arts initiative or a question. The other one is that Marshall, 2 years ago, I think, had organized 2 concerts in Codrington Park. And, you know, they were just for neighbors, and we all sat in driveways and had a glass of wine and enjoyed. It was just wonderful. He's thinking about doing it again this year. Well, is there a way that this committee can support that? Can we somehow, make it happen, or help Marshall make it happen? Or I don't know. I mean, I don't know the intricacies of these things, but it seems to me that those kinds of things, I think, help council members realize that the arts not only are important, but they're already here, and people are involved in them, and it just raises the profile again.
Yeah, okay. Lots of great discussion here. It seems at least that we're narrowing in on some big kind of like areas that we can actually educate and support what's happening and what we're hoping to have happen. Just, because I know some people have to leave around 11, and just to kind of keep things moving, would it be beneficial perhaps to, like, I know we've used Google Drive to create some documents in the past. Would that be of use? Like, I could make one this morning that perhaps starts to kind of codify some of these ideas, and if people have more, they can add them, so that way perhaps at maybe not the next, maybe the next meeting or the meeting after that, we can really start to hone in on exactly what we actually want to put into effect. Does that make sense?
Ian, would
Jerry?
would that be in the form of a motion?
Yes, that's what. Yeah, so
I like that idea of Claire.
Yeah, that was my general question, and now I was going to put forward a motion. Yeah. So I'll put that motion forward then. So are we all in agreement that that I create a document that starts to codify actionable items for this committee to investigate? Janet? Do I have a seconder? Lisa? Perfect. All in agreement? Great. Okay, so that passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Lovely. That's awesome. So thank you, everyone. Okay. So those were the things on the agenda. Is there any new business, or is there anything else that we wanted to talk about? Okay, I have one. Amanda, how did the grants go this year?
We had a good cross-section of applicants, a lot of the same that we've seen year over year. We did have some new applicants come to the table. We had 29 applications, so it's right around where we've been in previous years. The adjudicators have everything now, so that's all sitting with them, and we're firming up a date for early March for that meeting. We have a plan for the announcements to come out by end of March. So we're working through that process, and so far so good. The program review that we undertook in 2021 has helped us to really tighten up some of our evaluation and adjudication pieces. So there has been a lot of work on that, and I'll be curious to see how the scoring comes out and how everyone's scores relate to each other as we get to that point, and determine how we can allocate those funds. So stay tuned. You'll have an update in March. Well, you'll have an update before then, Ian, but the rest of the group will have an update in March.
Yes, I guess so. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I'm certainly, from a user perspective, I felt that the grant was much cleaner this year. I think the result of that work was evident, so kudos again to the team, and I'm excited for what the feedback is after that whole process is over from the jury's perspective as well. I also remembered that there was a community consultation event on February 2nd, I believe it was. Any update on that? How did that go?
So unfortunately, I was sick for that, but I did have some colleagues step in and run it for me. The feedback that came back was that the group really would like to see it happening regularly. So we're going to look to rescheduling them about bi-monthly. And so you'll see something coming to your inboxes shortly with some dates and ideas around the April meeting. And some of the feedback that came back was very much like we've just been talking about, trying to figure out a centralized way of sharing information about what's coming up and opportunities that might exist for people to get involved, whether it's through calls for artists, or it's just an opportunity to drive ticket sales for our various arts organizations. So we're going to work on formalizing an agenda for those meetings, and we're looking to perhaps have some sort of a prompt that we can share with those that are attending in advance to kind of drive some of that conversation and look at solving some of these problems that continually come up. I know that the centralized calendar of events that's specific to arts and culture might not be something that we can take on currently with the resources we have, but we'd love to try and come to a place where we can provide further resources for arts organizations and culture organizations to utilize and drive audiences. I don't think there was a whole lot of feedback around the professional development and sort of education piece. So we're still going to be doing some benchmarking and best practices look around how municipalities can best serve their arts sectors with workshops, because we did have one feedback item that said that a lot of the groups are now, especially the groups that are working with professionals, they're often offering the kinds of workshops that maybe we would have offered before. So right. I think we're looking now at programs and workshops that will benefit the broadest version of the sector, and perhaps support organizational capacity. So again, things like governance, marketing, some of the larger, more broad pieces versus very specific to a specific subsector. But again, there's opportunity for the committee to engage in those meetings as often or as infrequently as you'd like. I can absolutely bring feedback from that group to this committee if you'd like, and we welcome any feedback from you as well on how those meetings can go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, I certainly agree. I think we should try to have at least one representative there at those meetings, and that can be some of that community outreach piece that we just talked about, letting people know that there are other channels, that they don't have to, grill Amanda every 2 months, that there are other ways that they can be contacted. So yeah, and have their voices heard. So yeah.
Thanks.
Scott.
I actually attended that meeting. It was good. There was probably 8 to 12 of us, some people coming in and coming out. It was a great cross section. There were some amazing people on there, and yeah, it was there was a lot of enthusiasm of thanking the city of Barrie for involving the people in the arts community. So that was good. And it was, as said, is let's get an agenda going, and then let's have some key points, and then we can just we can keep that flow going. So I'll certainly continue on with that. So if you need a link from them to us, then I'll certainly volunteer for that.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Really generous of you. Yeah. Stephanie, I know you got to go, but is there any new business? Any other new business?
Sorry,
Scott. Oh, you just muted yourself. There you go.
Yeah, my wife wants to do that all the time, but it's a different thing. She searches for it when I'm talking to her.
And it was just Valentine's Day.
It was a nice Valentine's Day. So we meet once a month.
Hi, Stephanie.
Council meets once a week. So I'm presuming that if something comes up between meetings, that the councilors will basically contact us and say, we have this issue coming up. What do you have any opinions or any advice for us? And I'm wondering how that forum would work, if we'd have an extra one of these meetings, or whether there'd be an email sent out to us individually or in the group chat to say, by the way, this is coming up in 2 weeks. Our next meeting as a committee is 3 weeks. So can I get a little information from you on this?
Normally, the way those things work, I guess, and I'm sure the staff are probably better able to answer those questions than me, but normally the way that works is that if something comes up, it's somebody like Brandy who ends up dealing with it and putting it on the agenda for this committee to be discussed. So that's usually the process. Like if council, for example, said, well, you know, we'd like this or that, the clerk would probably make a note of it, hand it off to Brandy. Brandy would put it on our agenda, and then we can talk about it.
Thank you for that clarification. Anything else? Okay, great. So just looking ahead, so I believe our next meeting is going to be March 15th. That's the third Tuesday of next month. Yes?
The Ides of March.
The Ides of March, indeed, indeed. So we'll look forward to that. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Jerry, second. Scott, perfect. All in favor? Great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. 1 hour. Look at that. Awesome. So we'll see you all next month. And thank you, everybody, for your time and your amazing work.
Good.
Thank you.